Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Steely Ages podcast. And today is a special treat for me and for all of you. Today I'm speaking with Jamie Leonhart, and you may recall her name coming up a few times last season when I spoke with Michael Leonhart. I first saw Jamie Leonhart, I think it was back in 2011.
Okay.
I was living in Chicago and I saw the Brooklyn Rundfunk Orchestra in
Yes.
Chicago with Carolyn Leonhart. And then a few months later, they were touring and they went to Bloomington, Illinois. Um,
Yes.
I went down to Bloomington and saw you there, and it was a fantastic show.
So much fun. Oh my goodness. That's like one of the most fun projects I've ever been, you know, like happy to be a part of. Like it is
Right.
just such a cool project. Yeah.
It was such an unusual album and an unusual tour, but such a wonderful tour. And of course, your voice is incredible, and the singers were great. I think it was Victoria Cave and Dave. I don't remember Dave's last name, but it was
Yes.
a wonderful
Yes.
band, and I've been intrigued ever since. So I, of course, sought out your albums, and I guess it was last year, I came across The Illusion of Blue,
Mm-hmm.
and I was intrigued by it and the concept, especially when you released the video of Esther, I think it was. So if you could, oh, and I should go back a little bit. You are extremely busy because you just got off the road with Steely Dan, who's touring with the Eagles. How was that?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It again, like it's like such a pleasure, like a true pleasure to be invited and trusted, invited to sing with and trusted with that material and trusted, that I'm going to be putting it forward in the way that it was intended, right? And
Right, right.
so it's just so exciting. I love those harmonies. I love just the energy, obviously, of being on stage with that group. And I was laughing with Michael that um, and this is like a quirk maybe, but like jumbotrons really freak me out. Like truly, like really freak me out. And like I know some people are like, "Oh my God, look at me! It's so wonderful! I'm so big." But I was like, I can't know that it's there, or it'll just change the tenor of everything for me. And so I noticed that if I looked too far over toward the horns, like where I'd be like, "Hey," to Michael, then I would see myself potentially if I was on. So I was like not looking at him for the shows. Um, it's just a quirk, but like I just know that I function better not seeing like what
Right.
I'm doing. Like I can be in the moment, but not witness myself in the moment. So otherwise, like fantastic, just wonderful, wonderful.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. And you're back in New York now with your students and your other gigs, right?
Yes, yes. Teaching a ton right now, and maybe this will be something you ask later, but I've been really kind of sitting with like, what do I want to do next? Like, I get to choose, right? Like, I,
Right.
I get to choose. And I was supposed to have a show at Joe's Pub this month,
Mhm.
but I delayed it because I didn't know what the Steely Dan subbing schedule was going to look like, and I didn't want to hang up Joe's Pub, and
Sure.
obviously I wanted to take the other gig if I had it, and so because Joe's Pub is like my it's just such a wonderful place to play that anytime that I'm there, like I want to really bring something to the stage. And so I'm rescheduling that. But otherwise, I'm just like, okay, Jamie, what's next? Like, what's your next thing? You know, it's a big question.
Oh, you have so much going on, but the Illusion of Blue project, uh, what I assume that concept something you've been working on because you have been doing the Diastery shows in New York for a while. So could you talk about how that project came about?
Illusion of Blue.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, it is hard a little bit to track, but I'm going to do my best. It was intended to be an album that was finished in early 2020. Um, And it got, like things get pushed a little bit, but and it wasn't necessarily a big concept album. It was that there were a handful of things that I'd been really loving to sing in performance, or stuff that I'd done in Estuary that felt like it could live that they could live outside of Estuary also,
Mm-hmm.
like not necessarily show specific. And I really wanted to make this album. And um, life got a little complicated, and then the pandemic started, and I got sidetracked, which ended up being okay. But I got sidetracked and just really did not want to create any music. Like, I
Oh,
know some people who were just loving the online performances and feeling like Michael, did a lot of creative work, forged new relationships, did all things, but I felt very lonely and I felt very isolated and I didn't want to create. And so I threw myself into teaching more, doing voiceover work, other things that I could do. And so I kind of had put it aside a little bit.
mhm.
All the songs were there, most of the songs were there. And then I got to sit with it, which sometimes is terrible and sometimes is wonderful. And that's why there's a part A and a part B. Like, that's how I got there, because the whole album didn't make sense as a cohesive album
Yeah, interesting.
afterward. Didn't make sense to me. And I took out two songs and I added one in,
Hmm.
um, and really sat with it. And how do I order it so that there's some cohesion in part A and then cohesion in part B, but that they don't have to live together as a 12 song or album.
Yeah,
So I'm go ahead.
go ahead.
I'm long-winded. No, I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I was surprised that there were two parts. And then if you listen to both, I I consider them both separate albums, both albums, obviously the voice is the same, but some of the arrangements are a little bit more complex on B, a little bit simpler
Hmm.
on side A, but also um, side A is extremely personal,
Hmm.
um, compared to side B. So you said you decided to release as two different parts. Was there any thought to putting it on a CD? I know CD is kind of dead, but putting them both together?
There is still thought of putting it on, probably not CD, because as you said, it's not, they're so,
Mhm.
I don't, unless like I have this old
Right.
CD player radio that I got from, like, Points at the Bank or something like that, that I didn't think that it was worth doing on CD, but I do still have the intention to doing it on vinyl. It's just that vinyl got so overpopulated
Sure.
for a few years and expensive, and with huge long
Right.
waiting time to do it, that I have it designed already. I have the design, I have everything, but I just put that on hold. But I do still intend to do that because I think it would be nice as a side A and a side B of a
Exactly.
record,
Right.
where you get to take a breath. A CD, you don't take a breath,
Mhm.
you know, like it just plays through and you can decide, like, I'm only going to listen to side A because that's what I'm feeling today,
Right.
you know.
And a lot of artists are releasing singles, and maybe it's because of my age. I like to have the cohesiveness of a side as opposed to buying one song at a time and then
Mhm.
a month later buying another song. Uh,
Right.
but your project works so well with side A and side B. So why don't you tell me about Estuary, which is Gorgeous doesn't do the song justice. It is
Mm.
so touching and it's so contemporary as to what we're going through.
Mm.
How'd that come
Mhm.
about?
I love that you say that, and because it signals to me that it is something that can be applied anywhere, like on any onto any topic, and I really, really appreciate that. So Estuary came about um, when I was creating. this one woman musical narrative um, called Estuary, an artist mother story.
Mhm.
And the idea of it was that, in an estuary, which we have right here outside our fair city, right? We are living on an estuary, that there is this balance of salt water and fresh water. And if that balance goes off, then everything that lives in that area dies. So that's like, hopefully that doesn't happen to us, right? But the idea for me in that moment was trying to balance the motherhood and artistry,
Mhm.
and seeing if I could have that. And that's the exploration. But um, I did a lot of research on estuaries, and so that in the song it cites a lot of different things that occur within estuaries, um, and then musically, like it's meant to feel like the water. It's meant to feel like the flow, even from that opening sample that happens in the beginning. It's like kind of gets us on that little flowing journey. And I love it. I love singing it so much, and I love the harmonies, and it is incredibly personal. Um, but I think also offers that to someone else to be able to think about, well, what does that mean to me? What's my version of that?
Yeah, it does offer an opportunity for the listener to think about what's being said, how it applies to them, and the music is simply gorgeous. Was that the first piece that you recorded for the album?
Oh, that is a great question. Um, Trying to think. So 2 days. We spent 2 days at Reservoir. I'm trying to think of how, the Reservoir, the studio, and um, got as much tracking done as possible in those 2 days. But I really left the majority. I did some of my vocals that day, but I left some of it to finish later on, or to look at later on. But I think that Estuary was actually one just out of scheduling, and you were asking about we were maybe going to talk about the people who played, but I started with everyone. So I started with the bigger band,
Oh, okay.
like, and then kind of peeled off into the smaller group stuff, just because it was easier to kind of to time it. Like, I know that I need all these people.
Right.
You have to strategize, in the studio, obviously. And so I think we started with the bigger things like Peace, Love, and Understanding, and Willow Weep for Me, and uh, Ill Wind. Maybe I think we started with those three, and then got to the smaller ensemble stuff after that.
Okay, because yeah, Elvis Costello, I think Roger Rosenberg was involved with the
Yeah.
project,
Oh
doing the
my God.
solo.
Yes.
Rogers, well,
A
yeah,
beast. Yes.
incredible. A number of big name players.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you have the more contemplative, more small band stuff. But you said you started with the big band stuff.
I feel like Estuary
That
was kind of in the middle, maybe.
right. But at that point, when you started with the big stuff, you already had the concept that it would be two parts.
I didn't. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't, only once everything was recorded. And then, like, we were doing some finishing touches, and I was listening, and I was like, these songs don't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. I want something cohesive, and I don't want to have a record that's slapped together,
Mhm.
or feel like I have to just release singles or something in order for people to understand my music, whatever that even means. But I didn't. I was like, I don't even know if I had an order to start. I was just like, here are all the songs, and they're going to work. Maybe a little bit slipshod. Maybe I won't do my next project that way. But yeah, so I didn't know. I didn't know it was going to be in two parts yet. I really only knew that once I sat down and listened and was like, this doesn't make any sense, or like I have to figure out how to make sense of it because I want it in the world, but I want it in the world in a way that I feel happy with.
Sure, sure. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So the next song on the album is Pearl, which features Emily Hope Price.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Oh my goodness. So that was a song that well, I wrote for a friend who was going through like a really terrible divorce, and I was I really love doing research about something, like whatever it might be. If I get an idea, if I've seen like a PBS special about like pearls or something,
Right.
then I'm like, wait a second, I want to learn more about that. And then I started thinking like how, I mean, not that I am anthropomorphizing an oyster right now, okay, and
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
wholly own that. But I was thinking, imagine having this little grain of sand stuck in you, like stuck, and then you're just trying to get this
Wow.
thing to feel better, like something is, and then this beautiful thing comes out of it,
Mhm.
right? This pearl, if you like pearls, like, but it is, it's kind of this, it's unbelievable that that actually is even created, right? And so I was thinking about the pearl kind of in the context of it being a horrible thing that happens in your life if you're not, it doesn't go the way that you thought it would go.
Mhm.
But there could be something beautiful that comes out of it, and maybe it's just you realizing that you're stronger than you thought you were, or and then I wrote the cello um solo, and Emily Hope Price is just such, do you know her? Like
I don't know. I don't.
she's just such a cool human being, and she just sings on the cello. Like, I mean, it is magical listening to her, and we recorded the strings separately. So I never had them with the horns. I didn't have them. And we recorded them at my friend Paul Brill's studio in Brooklyn, Sterling. I don't, I'm trying to, it's Sterling Social Club. I think that's the name of his studio. But, and he has a beautiful, like, smaller space. And we set up the strings there, and they were extraordinary. And Emily played her solo there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Um, Third song on the album is probably my second favorite
Yeah.
side A, Morning Glory. It's just
Oh.
wow.
I love it too. And it's really like, I'm like, I can write a happy song. I can write a positive song. Because it's hard. It's like, I think we like, I mean, not everybody, but like, I know that I like can really dig into the unknown and doom and gloom. And there is unknown in it, right? Like, but it's like goes for the positive and the happy, and it's just such a joy to sing, and it's pretty simple, but the melody moves quite a bit, but the chorus is pretty simple. It's very sing-alongable,
Mhm.
and like and usually when I perform it, like the audience sings along with it, so it's fun. And as I said, like it's like it's like my version of high hopes, right?
Right,
Like
right. But given what we've gone through in terms of the pandemic and
mm,
the political unrest, it's just good to have a song like that. It is just
totally,
utterly
yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
So next is Wanting, which features Nels Klein, which did he play with David Bowie?
He's in Wilco.
Oh, of course. Yes, I should know that. Wilco, yes. Yes. How did that come
Yeah.
about?
Um, so it's like a kind of spooky song a little bit. And initially I had the thought of it being like a theremin maybe
Mhm.
doing that woo part. Um, and but I think we recorded like the bones of the tune without the solo on it. And Michael, because he was producing the record, suggested Nels, who's someone that Michael has done a lot of work with and we're very friendly with. And so we kind of just let him have at it a little bit, like just went through it a handful of times. And he just like played all these magical, spooky things, and we layered some of them. And again, it's not typical for me. Like I usually don't have guitar any version of guitar in my material. For the chordal instrument, I just write more toward the piano. Uh, but I loved having it as a textural element. It was cool to watch him kind of create.
And he recorded that in New York. He didn't record it in Chicago.
No, he did it here. He did it
Oh,
here. We
great.
did it in Michael's studio. He just had his headphones on and we mic'd it up and I sat quietly in the corner.
And did Michael engineer the album as well?
He did, he generally did most of it. We had some assistance from the wonderful people at Reservoir,
Okay.
also helping us out too.
Yeah. It, it, it sounds intimate. It sounds like a analog recording, though it isn't. I mean, it sounds just warm. It's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, wonderful arrangements too. Next is Wash Over.
Mm.
When the multi-tracked vocals, uh, hypnotic.
I mean, I'm with you. I get lost in it. I get lost in that song. And to me, it has that kind of similar quality, and it is that water-based, idea as the vocal chorus in Estuary.
Mhm.
They have kind of they're somewhat parallel. And I wrote Wash Over. Um, I had the wonderful opportunity to work as an kind of artist in residence on the North Fork of Long Island in a partnership that Joe's Pub was having with I have to remember the name. I don't know why it just went totally out of my head, but the name of the space.
Mhm.
And they were super generous and just gave me the space to create. And then the only two requirements were that I do a show. Like that's a pretty wonderful requirement,
Right.
right? Because okay, you're giving me a space to do a show. And then I would do one like loosely termed like open work session in which like I would be working in that space and anybody could come in and, you know, um, and listen if they wanted to. And that was fine too. But it happened to be where there were a bunch of winter storms. And on the North Fork, it was churning, like the sea was churning. And this hotel is right on the water. It
Oh,
actually, part of it, the dining area hangs over the water. There's like, it's being held up and the waves were coming up onto the windows
mm,
and they're like logs that were floating were banging into the side and I was sitting there thinking, I wonder if this is okay, like, you know and so I was allowing I wrote that song during that storm because I was just thinking about the sea like washing over and what it felt like to be protected and safe and also kind of on the edge of the unknown, right?
right.
So that's, and again, it has that same kind of watery quality to it, like water movement quality to it.
And the wall of multi-track vocals with the chorus is
Mm.
just hypnotic,
And that
actually.
was me, and then Latanya Hall
Oh, the Tanya Hall, yes,
and
yes.
Rebecca Haviland.
Okay,
So like powerhouse, singing on it.
wonderful. And finally, for side A, we have Tender.
Tender. That was an extra track. So that was a track that I recorded a year later.
Mhm,
Um, there were one or two other songs that I cut that we had recorded some of, and I just kept thinking, I don't know how to make this work. I don't know if I like it. I thought I did. And Tender was a song that I wrote later.
mhm,
So it wasn't even necessarily the intention wasn't necessarily there, but similarly, I I felt like it there, as you said, I felt like this side A is intimate
mhm,
and personal. And so I was thinking about the word tender and all the different definitions of it. And then I look up the word in like 10 different dictionaries and find like all the obscure, what are the old English versions of it. And tender has all these different meanings. And so I went through each section kind of exploring it. But it's really, you know, it is about, the end of it is just about being exposed and showing the parts that you might not be comfortable showing, but they're there anyway. um, just because we want to hide them doesn't mean people don't see them.
Right.
And that was really intimate and very, um, it's kind of the most naked song. There's no harmonies, except for the very last line, I think, or the second to last line. And it's very simple, like, I don't know what else to call it, but I felt like it was powerful, and it was like almost more naked than I'm used to, unless I'm doing a live performance where it's just like bass and voice or piano and voice or something. But recorded, I was like, oh, this is intimate. This is,
But you said it was simple, yet there is obvious care and rigor in the lyrics.
yes, yes.
And one thing that Michael talked about when I talked to him last year was your use of language, your 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 literary background, how
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
make sure you're conveying what you want to convey in the lyrics. And it shows in this album. Absolutely.
Great. I'm glad, because it's true. Yes.
Absolutely. So for side A, are there any players that you want to talk about before we get to side B? I'm
I'm
trying to.
sure I do. And I'm not sure who that would be. You already touched on Roger, obviously, who I just think, it's so funny because he sits there and he's like, oh, okay, we're going to go into the studio. And he's so mellow and he's so easy. And then he goes in and he blows like, like the world is on fire. It's like, it's so exciting, and it's just like, I think I'm always like blown away when I like, when you talk to him and you're just hanging out, and then when he starts to play and you're like, like, you have to like pick up your jaw. I don't know. I have to think about it. I might come back to that,
Okay.
but I don't
All right, then let's go to side two,
know.
Peace,
Okay.
Love, and Understanding by Elvis Costello.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I
Oh
guess
my goodness.
I guess it's kind of obvious why that song.
So I am. I have always been like a really big Elvis Costello fan, like since I was a kid, uh, and interestingly, Nick Lowe wrote "Peace, Love, and Understanding." Elvis Costello made it famous, but um, I've always loved it. I've always loved that song, and his is an incredibly driving version, like very kind of, post like punkish guitar. But the lyrics are so resonant for like what our world has looked like in these past handful of years, right? That I felt like, well, what if I turn it into 12A, feel and really sit into the lyric a little bit more, so that like I'm making everybody listen to the lyrics, but in a way that's not like making like a force, but more like, oh, I want to sit down and dig into this. I'd like
Like
to
you're
hear what
stripping
these
away on
words really
everything
are.
else. Right. Right.
Um, so that was why that particular tune, and um I love his version of it, but I also love the simplicity of the lyric too. And one of the things I love so much about Elvis Costello's writing, like his own writing, is how complex his lyrics are and how deep they are, and how like you have to kind of like look at them and, oh, what's that literary reference, and what's that and what's that, like Steely Dan lyrics. It's like they have so much to them. But this one is simple, and maybe because he didn't write the lyric, but he certainly conveyed it,
Right.
right? So, and he sings on the end of it. You can hear him singing on the end of it, which was like, my dream come true. Like,
Yeah,
which
and
is
I've
really
heard
cool.
I've heard Nick Lowe sing it a few times acoustically, and
Hmm.
the feel is totally different, which I love, and I love Lowe anyway. So it's a
Hmm.
wonderful version. Thank you for that.
You're
The
welcome.
next is a classic Willow Weep for Me. It's
Oh yeah.
lovely. Why Willow Weep for Me?
Um, I guess I've always loved the song, like I don't think there's anything super deep about it, but I've always loved the song and I love the groove. And I've been doing it live for a long time. And Michael and I were playing with it and he came up with that bass line, that really kind of is so slinky and assertive at the same time. And it really rides under the whole thing, except for when the feel changes a little bit. But it just and I love that, it was a song written by a woman, at those days that was not so common, so I love honoring that too. Um and I love singing it like kind of simply. It's like one of those tunes, where you're like, I can dig so deep into this and it feels so good that like I had to do it.
And this one features Roger Rosenberg on baritone. Um, if the song, I guess we can say this about a lot of songs. The song reminds me of New York.
Mm,
that's that's what I vision when I hear it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Next up is Zephyr,
Zephyr.
which I wasn't familiar with.
So Zephyr was in Estuary.
Okay.
And it was a point in Estuary in which um, I'm exploring what would it like if you don't get up and just walk away from something that's not pleasing, like if you don't indulge the fantasy, you have all the fantasies, but you don't indulge the fantasies, then like what do you do? Like, what's the exploration? So it's like being in this boat and knowing that you're going. So a zephyr is a kind of gentle westerly wind that kind of blows things, but gently. Um, and so the idea is kind of taking this journey and seeing what's going to happen. You don't know, and your compass might be broken, and your map might not be right, but you're still going to go and see what's going to happen. If you pull up that anchor and you take your ship out, but you don't abandon the rest of the world,
Right.
right? That's the idea behind it. And again, like I'm just such a fan of vocal harmony, that anytime I can get people in there, and that's similarly Latanya and Rebecca, and singing the harmonies that echo, and then the bridge, we all kind of come together in some moving, a lot of movement. But again, like such a pleasure to do
Right.
that.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful as well. And then we get to Ill Wind.
Mm, I mean, again, it's like it's such an amazing tune, and the writing is obviously
Mhm.
impeccable. And what we did was, there's the verse at the top, but when we original so I love a verse, like I love the idea of a verse, that kind of pre-story, pre-song story that sets up the story for us, right? And there is one for just to go back, there is one for Willow Weep for Me. I didn't record it, but it's cool. It's just like I don't know if I knew it then or I knew it well enough to feel like I could tag it onto my arrangement and still feel, like it was as good as the rest of the
Oh,
tune. I didn't want to sacrifice the rest of the tune, but I do it live sometimes. But with Ill Wind, um, that we found a version of it um, in which that bridge or the what we turned into the verse was actually in the middle of the tune,
okay.
almost like okay, what tune am I thinking about? Bitter and pattern that drives me mad, love, love, love. Uh, it's too much. Stormy weather,
Oh, okay.
right? You know how Stormy Weather has that? Do you know? Are you familiar with Lena Horne's version of Stormy Weather?
Yes, I am.
So in the middle of it, which a lot of people don't do, right? In the middle of it, there's this. kind of bizarre bridge or like B section, or it's not really a B section, it's like a bridge, that I'm trying to think of how it goes. I'm just
Hmm.
going to tell, we'll all listen to it. It'll be an inspiration for us to dig into our old collections and listen to it. But we found this version of Harold Arlen. It was
Okay.
Harold Arlen playing piano and singing himself, just that. And he sings, ill wind. He's singing just like blow, ill wind, blow away. And then he goes into the like that verse, and it's like kind of honky tonk sounding, like it's very strange, very not honky tonk. It certainly wasn't honky tonk, but like that feel, like a little bit janky. Didn't like sounded like he was like, I'm gonna put something in here, bum 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 bum
Mhm.
bum, and you're like, okay. So it was weird, but when Michael and I were talking about it, I was like, wow, but that's so weird that it's really cool. And what if we picked it up from the middle of the tune where it doesn't totally make sense for me to do that way, and we parked it at the front of the tune instead and turned it into a verse.
Oh,
And it was
interesting.
perfect,
Yeah.
right? It worked perfectly to the point where I'm like, it should have been, maybe it was the verse, for him, and he was just kind of fooling around with it, or who knows. But because he was doing like the slow ill wind, and then it was like, how can I feel at ease when you go through the trees? Like it was very like, and so we slowed it down. We made it a little more, contemplative, and then kind of just dragged the song, like kind of slowed it down to as far as we could without it feeling, like too slow. There's that couple ticks that'll really make you not want to listen to something or listen to something. So hopefully I stayed on the good side of that. But
I mean, taking something old and making it new, but still keeping the essence of what it was. That is
mm-hmm.
so fantastic, and that's what makes the song and the album special. The next to last song is Some Other Time.
uh, Mark McLean is playing drums on that. Some other time he played on a couple of the tunes.
Okay.
He's definitely playing on that. So this is a song that I couldn't sing without crying for a long time. I don't know, like maybe everybody has something like that. Maybe no one does. Or maybe I'm just owning that for everybody. But so, um, Leonard Bernstein, right? Bernstein. I
First time.
always get it wrong, whichever way it's going to be. Um, he wrote it. It was from On the Town, I think, right? Was it from On the Town? And there's just such longing in it. And I started thinking about it. Not that it was not part of Estuary, it had nothing to do with Estuary, but I started thinking about it through the lens of what we gain and what we lose as things change in our lives, and in the lens of parenting, right? That, the lyrics are, where has the time all gone to? Haven't done half the things we want to. Oh, well, we'll catch up some other time, and I'm like, that is devastating,
That's really
devastating.
nice.
Right. And so like the second that the chords start, I'm like, and so I was like, I'm going to record this song because it's important, like it's really important. And it did it did continue kind of thematically with the expression and the exploration of loss,
Yeah.
and then what you gain after you experience the loss.
Yeah, that especially given the time you were recording it, what we were going through, that's just so touching and real.
Hmm.
Wow.
And
Okay.
Michael plays that gorgeous solo on it.
Yes, that's right. He did. Yeah, he did. Yes.
And call him out as a soloist because he was really behind the piano. He didn't play trumpet on anything else. That was, he assigned it to other people, and he was behind the piano for most of it. But he played the solo on this, and it was just stunning.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All right. And then the last song is How Did It Come?
Wait, what's the last
I think it's How Did
song?
It Come? Is that the last one?
I don't know. I'm like,
I have to look it up.
I'd have to look it up. Let me look.
Okay.
I love that you're telling me something. I'm like, what is it?
Maybe I'm wrong.
You're probably right. I mean,
Wait.
Illusion of Blue. I'm looking it up.
Not that
Side
one.
B.
Did I get it wrong? No, I'm wrong. Some other time's the last song. So
That's the last song.
I'm not sure
Okay.
where did I get how did it come from?
I was like, what is How Did It Come? Because I'm gonna write a song called How Did It Come? You're inspiring
See,
me.
I
I'm gonna
inspired me to
take
write a
that and
song.
run with it. No, Some Other Time is the last tune.
Right.
And then there are two other songs recorded that potentially are gonna be a side A and side B of a single. And I'm like totally blocking out what they were. Um, which is why I was like, wait, did I end up putting one of the songs on it? But I maybe didn't.
So those were not released, the other songs, because you have some singles. Let me see if I can figure out which ones are.
I think they were from the record,
They
most
were
of
from the
them.
records. Definitely was from the
Yeah.
record and Wanting as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So in terms of players, I read on your Instagram about Roger Rosenberg. We talked about him on Willow Weep for Me. Dave Guy on Ill Wind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the great Michael Leonhart on piano on Some Other Time. Joe Bailey on Peace, Love, and Understanding. Drums, Mark McLean. Am I familiar?
Yep.
Joe Martin on bass.
Bass. Yep.
Bill Dobro,
Yep. On drums also.
drums.
Mm-hmm.
Raymond James Mason, trombone.
Fantastic. I
And
mean, he's like the life of the party. Like, boy.
wow,
Yeah.
Rebecca Hart on guitar.
No,
Um,
who's that?
Rebecca Hart? No, I thought
Mm-mm.
okay. Anyone else?
No, I think maybe Rebecca Haviland is singing.
Okay, I have Rebecca
And because I think the only guitar, if I'm right, is
Hart.
Nell's
Nels.
on Wanting. So
Right.
Rebecca's singing, Latanya's singing, um, John Bailey was on trumpet, like you said. Just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody.
Yeah, that's all I
And
have.
then Emily and Claudia um, Chopek was on violin,
Mhm.
and Ludovica Bertone was on violin also.
Oh, wonderful.
And they
So,
were gorgeous, all of them, just stunning. I mean,
how long did it take you to record it from start to finish?
there were like years in between
Right,
sometimes.
right.
But if we had to like box it all up, I could have done it all in a week, like it just took a long time. If I had, if you sent me to a cabin, one of the not a cabin, but like one of those studios that like you live in it,
Right.
that has like the house on the side, like in Woodstock somewhere. And we just said, we're going to stay here for 2 weeks and do everything. We totally could have done it. It just, the pandemic happened, everything happened. I kind of lost my excitement for music and for like, I love music so much and I love singing so much and I love expressing so much. And I really couldn't find my joy. Like I could not find it. And I didn't want to put something out from that mindset. Like, I didn't want to put something out feeling like, I don't even know if I like this, because that's terrible. How am I supposed to ask anyone else to enjoy it if I can't find joy?
Yeah, exactly. It does show um, your craftsmanship and your love for your gifts. It's a wonderful project. I can't wait for the vinyl, quite frankly. Um,
Okay, you're inspiring me to write a new song, and you're inspiring me to get back on my vinyl because I really have it designed. I had like quotes, I had everything, and I just put it aside because everybody was doing vinyl and it was going to take 2 years anyway. And so I think I can get back on the train now.
and I'm one of those liner note geeks. I want to know who played on what.
Totally. And I have it all written down. I have what Illusion of Blue means, why that title, all of it. So, yep.
So what's next for you?
So what's next for me? I guess two things. Um, I mean, multiple things, but two that are non-teaching or Steely Dan related. Um, One is I'm going to revisit Estuary and see what it is. I made some changes between the first time that I did it, wrote it and did it, and then the second time I did it, I put it up. And it's a big production to put up. And so that's why I wanted to shelve it for a while and understand what I wanted from it a little bit more. And so I'm now in that curious stage, like, because it's good and it's funny and musically it's great. And I get to play with wonderful people and sing with wonderful people. Um, so that I'm going to take off the shelf and take out and go through it all and see what's what about it. Maybe even add. It only goes up to Milo being 5 years old, so maybe I add a little bit extra, or who knows. So that's being explored, and then I just want to dig in and like do a ton more writing and see where that leads me and like who I am as a writer right now, what I want to express, and I feel very open about it.
Mhm.
So I can't tell you that I have a direction yet, um, but I'm excited to see what it will be.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you're doing a live performance in New York, I need to get back up to New York. We usually get up there twice a year to do Broadway shows and stuff. So I will certainly stop in and see one of your live performances.
Excellent. I'll let you know way in advance. But when I rebook the Joe's Pub, or as I'm rebooking it, I'll promise to let you know, because I want it to be a show that I'm introducing new material, and you know, I want it to be something that's exciting for us to all be a part of.
Well, this is a wonderful project.
Thank
Simply
you.
beautiful, touching. I appreciate your time. Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm just so happy to talk to you and happy to talk about it. And it kind of, I feel like I want to sit down and listen to it again. Like I do listen to it on occasion,
Right.
but I want to sit down and listen again and see, and I'll let you know if there's anything that I forgot. Um, but um, got me excited about it again. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. You take care of yourself. Tell
You
Michael I said
too.
hello, and I
I
hope to see you
will.
soon. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.